Breaking news from the United States. Prominent conservative commentator Charlie Kirk has been shot at an event in Utah. His organization, Turning Point USA, confirmed the news.
Don't let him fool you, gang. Andrew Nichols right there is another CBC hack, a propagandist, zealot, liberal sycophant. Watch what he says about Charlie Kirk the next day.
Latest on the killing of far-right activist Charlie Kirk in the U.S. Investigators have released images of a person of interest. We'll have more on that just ahead.
Oh, yeah. Everyone that works for the CBC is a liar. They don't tell the truth. They deceive Canadians on purpose, doing the bidding of their employer, the Liberal federal government. They are sick, every single one of them, from David Cochrane to Andrew Nichols to whatever, Porky Pig. What's her name? Oh, nobody. Oh, Rosie. Oh, she's not the one I meant. Katie Simpson. Oh, they're all disgusting. They're repulsive. Jamil Jivani is going to level the playing field with CBC right here.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
You were talking a lot about Charlie Kirk's assassination today. Can you just kind of round up a bit of a response to the news that Charlie Kirk died yesterday?
Yeah, well, it's a very sad and tragic situation. I think it's important for people to remember there's an entire generation of people in Canada and in the United States and around the world who have grown up with Charlie Kirk being a part of how they think about politics, because he's been famous and on YouTube for the last 13 years. And there are so many people who've watched his debates on campuses, and where they agree with him or they disagree with him. A lot of people admired the effort he made to have conversations with people who don't share his point of view. And so I heard from so many young people in our community here in Bowmanville, Oshawa North, and also around the country, who are just really sad. And I felt like, we had planned this event here in Bowmanville weeks ago, but it felt like an important thing to talk about today and to just acknowledge the sadness a lot of people feel, but also to make the point that, we're at risk of people feeling discouraged by what happened, right? Young people feeling like politics is not worth engaging in because of how polarized it is, and to feel like, hopeless about the future. Especially people who agree with Charlie that debating folks on the other side of the political issue is worth doing. So I felt it was important to kind of point out that, not to take that lesson from this, but rather to really look at the impact he had and remind ourselves that having debates and taking strong positions and standing up for what you believe in, but also being open-minded to talk to people who don't agree with you, this is an important part of politics. And I hope that's what people remember him for, and that is his legacy, and that I hope young people who grew up watching him on YouTube feel that that is part of the legacy to continue, that don't shy away from taking strong positions, say how you feel, say what you believe, but also be prepared to debate. That's what we're supposed to do in politics, and I think that's what makes for the best political culture we can have here in Canada.
Absolutely. Okay, and I don't know if you've seen any of the CBC's reporting on this. They immediately, their first article, they ended it off by wrapping this up into January 6th, referencing January 6th and political violence that happened since from Trump supporters. They also immediately put a thing out on his most controversial statements. This morning, Barbara Perry from Oshawa, the so-called hate expert, was on and discussed kind of her fears that this will backlash into violence against left-wing folk. I don't know if you've seen this, but what is your response to the way that the CBC, the state broadcaster, has handled this?
I'm not surprised by how CBC has reported on this story, in part because I think CBC has a hard time humanizing people they don't agree with. And I think that's a really huge problem in Canadian media. We have a diverse country with people with all sorts of different perspectives. And we should be able to share that with peace and understanding of one another. And, you look at an outlet like CBC and they love to lecture about things like diversity and, equity and inclusion, and the whole, ideology that they embrace wholeheartedly. And yet, when they have an opportunity to show that they appreciate and respect differences of opinion, you can see in their reporting that they actually don't seem to respect people with a different point of view. I think at minimum, they should be able to say without equivocation that violence is never acceptable, regardless of whether you like what someone said or not. And when you publish an article outlining someone's controversial views, it's almost has this hint of suggestion that somehow justifies what happened or should be taken into consideration when you grieve a young man's death. And I think that's, it's just reprehensible. It's unacceptable. And, I think this is an opportunity for people to really check their own humanity here. Like, a young man, 31 years old, with 2 children and a wife, was assassinated on a university campus, assassinated at an event where he was debating people with another point of view, open to hearing their side and sharing his own. I think that's what we're supposed to want in our politics and in our media, is different points of view, and they should respect that. And their reporting doesn't seem to suggest that they do. And I think when they, clutch their pearls, when conservatives say that they're biased, I hope they remember how they reported on this. And maybe remember why people call them biased, because time and time again, when they've had an opportunity to show they respect people across the political spectrum, they have shown that they don't.
Right, and it is too early to say. We don't know a lot about this case, but we've seen people on media from institutions in Canada. There was a U of T professor saying that a bullet is like, not good enough for fascists and things like this. Does this kind of play into kind of potentially why people felt radicalized enough to assassinate Charlie Kirk to begin with? Like, why do you think people are feeling this radicalized that they resort to political violence?
Well, as you said, we don't know all the specifics of this case. I do think, as a member of parliament who's been in office for about a year and a half now, I certainly have felt that we are in a political culture where vilifying people comes easily to some folks in the media, to some folks who are involved in partisan politics. And I think in many cases they want to have it both ways, where they want to hold you accountable for what you say, but they don't want to hold themselves accountable for what they're saying. And the reality is, like, if you have a systematic effort to smear a person, to portray them as something other than a human being who simply disagrees with you, but instead they want to make this person into a monster, I think they have to accept that, like, their actions have an effect on people. And I wish they held themselves to the same standards that they hold others, and certainly making jokes or making light of death or justifying someone being assassinated. I mean, this is really unhealthy, bizarre, unhinged stuff. And I think people need to be able to point that out. I mean, I've been a public figure for a while. I have taken strong positions. People know where I stand on important things. Whether they agree with me or not, I'm pretty open about my views. And I have never once in my entire life thought that to make a joke or make a light or make excuses of violence perpetrated on someone who disagrees with me. And I wish more people on the political left felt that way too. Are people free to have a different point of view, or are institutions feeling like entitled to crack down on them and try to stifle the ability to articulate different ideas? And I think that's very unhealthy. And I will say, as a person who spends my time talking to Canadians every day, it's my job to read emails that are sent to my office, to talk to people in my community. I really believe Canadians are far more open-minded than a lot of the powerful people running this country are. And I think Canadians are open to debates and different perspectives. And in fact, regardless of where they fall in the political spectrum, I think we all feel like we have to accept other points of view just to live our lives in a diverse country. Whether it's your workplace, your own family, your friends, people are used to talking to people with different points of view. It's odd to me that we have so many institutions and media outlets that seem completely out of sync with the Canadian people. And that is a huge red flag to me. We deserve a country where the values and the morality of the people are reflected in the institutions that we fund with our taxpayer dollars. And when that's not happening, we have a problem. It needs to be fixed. And frankly, this is one of the reasons why I'm a member of Parliament, because I want an alignment between the good-natured values of the Canadian people and the institutions that they fund.
So is there anything I didn't ask you that you think is relevant, or just something that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate the point I made earlier, which is any young person who is sad and feels like they're in a moment of grief because of what happened to Charlie Kirk, I just want to encourage them, don't be intimidated, don't give up. We need you to organize, we need you to be politically involved, we need you to speak clearly and take a stand for what you believe in. And I just genuinely hope that people are not discouraged because of what happened. I want them to feel hopeful and to keep trying, keep fighting for a better future.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
Just to let you know, guys, some people are very cruel. I've got this, I think, at Michelle K4745. I don't know. See you next Tuesday, Michelle. That is a... Why are you being like that? There's nobody quite like Jamil Jivani. He's so well-spoken. He stands out in the Conservative Party. Well said, Jamil Jivani. Waiting to see you on Monday, big guy.
Canada's broken, and Canada's broken because we're stupid. Okay? Canada's broken because we're stupid. And as the most European of the non-European countries, Canada looks first to the European Union to build a better world.
How many kids did you molest with Jeffrey Epstein?
More than just elbows.
Wow.
These are Muslim values.
A real change.
These are Canadian values.
Wow.